Today, we're going to take a look at AUDEN LARRATT versus Arm Wrestling Whisperer. Now, this video is going to be a much more free-flowing kind of video with less post-production editing. I think that's going to be more applicable to a more in-depth analysis kind of video, so I apologize ahead of time that you guys are going to have to listen to me fat guy breathing, but that's just going to be the way that it is, unfortunately. So what I want to talk about in this match is something that I think AUDEN does extremely well. And that is that he demonstrates a principle we've talked about on this channel many times before, and that is the concept of whatever you want to achieve ultimately in the actual arm wrestling match, you probably want to do the exact opposite of that in the setup. So in other words, if you're trying to top roll, your setup might actually look like you're wanting to press somebody, and that's what we see AUDEN do in this match. So you might incorporate a lot of side pressure and a lot of supination, even if in the actual match, once they say go, you're going to sweep to the outside and use a lot of reverse side pressure and pronation. So notice how AUDEN sets up in this match. We see initially there is a gap between AUDEN's thumb and Etienne's hands. Etienne is the arm wrestling whisperer, if you did not know that. There's a gap between AUDEN's thumb and Etienne's hand, indicating that AUDEN is supinating in the setup. And in this round in particular, the reason I'm looking at round 3 is because it's the round in which it's the most obvious. And you can even see the referee is talking about it. The referee knows, Hristo knows that AUDEN is not only supinating, but he's kind of trying to bunch up his hand here, and he wants to create a gap in between his thumb and Etienne's hand. This is so that Etienne cannot get any kind of connection that he needs to in order to get around AUDEN's hand and in order to be able to bend his wrist effectively. If AUDEN just took a more normal setup, or even worse, what a lot of top rollers have a tendency to want to do, understandably, is to pre-pronate in the setup. And this is going to give Etienne everything that he wants, but AUDEN is implementing the principle of doing the exact opposite of what you want to achieve in the match in the setup. So we see him supinating, and it becomes more and more clear. Let's back up just slightly here, because there's a moment right here in the very beginning where it's even a little bit easier to see. Etienne is lifting his elbow, he's trying to get around, and notice how AUDEN does not do a top rolling motion in order to avoid this, but rather he supinates in even further and even harder on Arm Wrestling Whisperer. So he does not combat supination with pronation, but he combats it with supination of his own and side pressure of his own. Notice how he's nearly pressing Etienne in the setup. He's extremely cupped, he's extremely supinated, and his shoulder is very forward. If you didn't know better, you would think that AUDEN is potentially the inside puller in this match. Notice again how far AUDEN is supinating in as Etienne tries to do the same thing. So what AUDEN is doing is he is blocking Etienne's ability to get around his hand, and that was the absolute crucial thing. That was AUDEN's win condition in this match. After the match was over, when AUDEN's being interviewed, he talks about how the strength gap was not actually all that crazy necessarily. It was more so the technique gap and AUDEN's ability to block Etienne in the setup. So after all this rambling, let's go ahead and get to the first go. And you'll be able to see right before the moment of the go, it looks like AUDEN is about to press Etienne. He has more bone line commitment. He is more supinated than Etienne is. And when we actually play this, you can see how that works. Etienne has no ability to get around AUDEN's hand whatsoever. He has nowhere to run, nowhere to go, and he doesn't have the ability to get far enough around AUDEN's hand to actually do a wrist curl. AUDEN is way out onto the fingertips of Etienne, but he did this. He achieved this all in the setup. If AUDEN had done a more traditional top roll setup, it's very possible that Etienne could have forced him into a hook, but the only reason that AUDEN was able to get this is because he implemented the principle of doing the exact opposite of your goal in the setup. Whatever you want to achieve ultimately in the actual arm wrestling match, you do the exact opposite of that in the setup. AUDEN does this in every single round very, very subtly, and it is important that you do it subtly, but I thought that it was the most easy to see, the most apparent in this round 3 outside of straps. And you can see how terrible Etienne's coverage is here. He is not very far around AUDEN's hands, and he just has no ability to try to wrist curl him from there. The match is far from a wrist-on-wrist, arm-on-arm position. Sure, AUDEN is stronger. Sure, he has other advantages here besides just the setup, but the biggest difference in this match, I do think, comes down to the setup. AUDEN does do this very well, but I also think that just whoever is the top roller in the match is going to have an advantage. It is just simply an easier task to prevent a deep grip rather than to obtain a deep grip. Etienne needed to obtain a deep grip, and really the only way he could have done that was to lift his elbow off the pad. And if AUDEN is just subtly supinating, subtly bumping sideways, and subtly rising, he only has to do it by a few millimeters, and it's going to make all the difference in the world, just like it did in this match, where Etienne is left with literally nothing. No connection to his power, no ability to bend his wrist, no ability to go sideways, and he can't go outside either. So let me know what you guys thought about this match. I know a lot of people are saying it was a huge mismatch and all of these things, but I did think that it was a really great example of how to perfectly set up against a hook puller if you are that longer arm top roller, and you have to prevent the match from going inside at all costs. Also, if you guys want to, let me know what you think about this kind of more free-flowing style where I'm rambling a little bit more. This isn't going to be the new normal, but this is a little bit more fun for me, so maybe I'll do this occasionally if we have a match like this that I would like to review a little bit more in depth.